everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kayla and it's time to crack into a good book. So today's video is going to be about all of the October releases that I'm really excited about. I, again, have something like 40 books on my list. A lot of them are ones that I want to wait until I see more reviews for because a lot of the ones currently are a bit more mixed, but I think I have 22 books to talk to you about today. So before we jump in, leave some sort of Halloween emoji in the comments to let me know that you're here. So like always, we'll move throughout the month with release dates. I do want to mention that I've read a couple of October arcs and either have already reviewed them or will be reviewing them soon. One of them is The Death of Jane Lawrence by Caitlin Starling. This is adult horror. I really enjoyed it, gave it 4 stars. I just reviewed it in my last weekly update, so I'll leave that video linked down below in the description so you can check that out. And the other arc that I just recently read is Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Khaw, so I will be reviewing that in my next weekly update, so just, be on the lookout for that. I think I'll probably give it 3 stars, but, just a heads up. So now we'll jump in. The first book I'll talk about came out October 1st, and that's The Goddess of Nothing at All by Rector. So this is adult fantasy and it's some sort of Norse retelling. So it says it's perfect for fans of Circe, The Witch's Heart, and The Silence of the Girls. So it's like, perhaps you know the myths. Fury's benevolent gods, a tree that binds 9 realms, a hammer stronger than any weapon, and someday the end of everything, but few have heard of me. Looking back, it's easy to know what choices I might have made differently. At least it feels that way. I might have given up on my title, told my father he was useless, king of gods or no, and left Asgard, made a life somewhere else. Maybe I never would have let Loki cross my path, never have fallen in love. But there's no going back. We were happy once, and the price for that happiness was the end of everything. So that is really intriguing to me. I tend to love any sort of retelling, and I think Norse mythology is really exciting. I feel like there's kind of been more of a push in that lately, which is really interesting, but I'm totally here for it. And yeah, I mean, basically it mentions books that I liked, so I was like, okay, that seems really promising to me. But yeah, I mean, I will admit that I don't entirely know who this is following based on this synopsis, but I'm really intrigued to find out. And I think this sounds fabulous. It seems to be getting really good reviews, so hopefully it'll be awesome. The next book I'll talk about came out October 4th, and that's Scales and Sensibility by Stephanie Burgis. So this is the start of a Regency Dragons series. So this is adult Regency fantasy rom-com. And this just looks so fun. I've read a book by this author before and really enjoyed it, so I thought this sounded really fun. So we have a sensible, practical Eleanor, who really did plan to be the model poor relation when she moved into Hathergill Hall. She certainly never meant to kidnap her awful cousin Penelope's pet dragon. She never expected to fall in love with the shameless, but surprisingly sweet fortune hunter who came to court Penelope, and she never dreamed that she would have to enter into an outrageous magical charade to save her younger sister's futures. However, even the most brilliant scholars of 1817 England still haven't ferreted out all of the lurking secrets of rediscovered dragonkind, and even the most sensible of heroines can still make a reckless wish or two when she's pushed. Now, Eleanor will have to find out just how rash and resourceful she can be when she sets aside all common sense. Maybe, just maybe, she'll even be impractical enough to win her own true love and happily ever after, with the unpredictable and dangerous help of the magical creature who has adopted her. So this just sounds so delightful. It's a full-length novel and the first in a new series of standalone romantic comedies, so that sounds really fun. I think I had read, I think it's called Snowspell maybe by this author, and thought it was just delightful. That was a novella. But I know she can write really great, like, Regency era books, so I think this seems really fun because dragons also. But, rom-com, I don't know, all of this sounds really super fun, and again, the dragons. I feel like a lot of the synopsis kind of reminds me somewhat of the premise of the Lady Trent series by Marie Brennan, which I really love, so hopefully they're, I mean, that's kind of, it's like dragons and I guess like Regency era stuff, but I feel like that would be really fun if this is kind of like a similar tone. This might be a little bit more comedic than the Lady Trent series, but I think this sounds really delightful and I can't wait to get to it. Okay, so now we'll move to October 5th, and the first book I do want to briefly mention is SISTERSONG by Lucy Holland. If you've seen, I guess, my most recent weekly update, you'll remember that I gave this 5 stars. I absolutely loved it. It's an adult historical fantasy, and it's, I think, a retelling of old British folklore. So basically, there's this ancient kingdom in Britain, and there's, magic to be found in the land, but the king used to know this, so now the lamp has turned from him and is kind of like calling to his children. We have Riva, who's a healer, but she can't heal herself. We have Cain, who wants to be accepted for who he truly is, as a son, not a daughter. And then Cinna dreams of traveling the world and finding adventure. So basically, you know, we've got invading Saxons, there's a certain meddler and magician who makes an appearance, and then, you know, there's warriors with secrets, and all of them kind of get entangled into a web of treachery and heartbreak who must fight to forge their own paths. So I thought this was absolutely lovely. It reminded me a lot of the historical fantasies and retellings that I really like, you know, like Juliet Marillier or, you know, books by Madeline Miller. It has that same sort of beautiful quality to the writing, and I thought this was more character driven, which was really lovely. You know, you get to really explore the bonds between all the siblings, and, you know, there's still some really exciting moments with some battles and things like that. So if you want to hear more of my thoughts, I'll point you to that review. It was like a 5-minute review, so like I just kind of gushed about how much I loved it, but just wanted to mention it again here because I did give it 5 stars. The next book for October 5th is The Holly Jolly Diwali by Sonya Lalli. That's a very fun title. So this is adult romance. We have 29-year-old Nikki, who has always made practical decisions. Despite her love for music and art, she became an analyst for Disability. She's always stuck close to home in case her family needed her, and she's always dated guys that seem good on paper rather than the ones who give her butterflies. When she's laid off, she realizes that practical hasn't exactly paid off for her. So for the first time ever, she throws caution to the wind and books a last-minute flight for her friend's wedding. So she arrives in India just in time to celebrate Diwali, and she meets a London musician, and it's like, maybe it's the splendor of Mumbai or the magic of the holiday season, but she's immediately drawn to this guy. At the wedding, the champagne flows, and their flirtatious banter makes it clear that the attraction is mutual. So when they join the friend who's getting married, her husband and their friends on a group honeymoon, the connection grows deeper. I guess he helps her get in touch with her passionate and creative side and with her Indian roots. When she gets a new job offer back home, she has to decide what she wants next, you know, for the next chapter of her life, to cling to the straight and narrow like always, or take a leap of faith and live the kind of bold life the old Nikki never would have dreamed of. So that sounds like super delightful and really fun. I like that our main character is an analyst. You know, I'm a biostatistician, so that's certainly up my alley. I've actually read The Matchmaker's List by this author before and really enjoyed it. This seems really fun to kind of explore India throughout this book, and you know, we've got this holiday season taking place, and I feel like this is going to be super fun to read and like very atmospheric. So this just sounds like a really delightful romance, and I definitely want to check it out. The next book that came out October 5th is Cackle by Rachel Harrison. So this is adult fantasy / horror, I think, and so basically all her life Annie has played it nice and safe. After being unceremoniously dumped by her longtime boyfriend, she seeks a fresh start. She accepts a teaching position that moves her from Manhattan to a small village upstate, and she's stunned by how perfect and picturesque the town is. The people are all friendly and warm. Her new apartment is dreaming too, minus the oddly persistent spider infestation. Then she meets Sophie, who is, you know, beautiful, magnetic, and charming, and she takes a special interest in Annie and basically wants to be her friend. More importantly, she wants Annie to stop apologizing and start living for herself. That's how Sophie lives. Annie can't help but gravitate towards Sophie, wanting to spend more and more time with her despite the rest of the town folks seem a little afraid of her. I'm like, okay, there are some things. Her appearance is uncanny and ageless, her mansion is in the middle of the woods, and that feels a little unearthly, and she does seem to wield a certain power, but she couldn't be, could she? So I think this sounds super fun. It, like, kind of mentions that it's a darkly funny and frightening novel, so I feel like this is going to blend, you know, some horror elements. Certainly it seems like we will have some witchy type things going on here, but it also seems like there's some comedic elements as well, and I find that for me personally, like, horror tends to work really well with some sort of like comedic aspect. Certainly with like horror movies, I need something funny to you know, distract me from getting too scared, but you know, with books that's a little bit of a different story. But I think this sounds really fun, and I definitely hope that it's pretty atmospheric with this, you know, small town vibe, and I'm very curious to see what's up with Sophie, so I think this sounds super fun, and I definitely want to check it out. The next book that came out October 5th is Vespertine by Margaret Rogerson. So this is a YA fantasy. I've read Sorcery of Thorns by this author before and really enjoyed it, so that's certainly one of the reasons why I want to pick this up. But we have the dead who do not rest. So Artemisia is training to be a Grey Sister, who is a nun who cleanses the bodies of the deceased so their souls can pass on. Otherwise, they will rise as spirits with a ravenous hunger for the living. She would rather deal with the dead than the living, who trade whispers about her scarred hands and troubled past. When her convent is attacked by possessed soldiers, she defends it by awakening an ancient spirit bound to a saint's relic. It's a revenant, a malevolent being that threatens to possess her the moment she drops her guard. Wielding its extraordinary power almost consumes her, but death has come to this place, and only a Vespertine, a priestess trained to wield a high relic, has any chance of stopping it. With all the knowledge of Vespertine's lost to time, Artemisia turns to the last remaining expert for help, the Revenant itself. As she unravels the sinister mystery of saints, secrets, and dark magic, her bond with the Revenant grows. And when a hidden evil begins to surface, she discovers that facing this enemy might require her to betray everything she's been taught to believe if the Revenant doesn't betray her first. So this sounds like a really fun, dark YA fantasy. I like that, we have spirits who are hungry for the living. It's fun that we have a Revenant and they're having to team up. That's quite the partnership there, certainly. I'm certainly really intrigued by this mystery. It seems like, I don't know, I'm very curious to see if she's going to end up being possessed. So I think this sounds super fun, and again, I've read Sorcery of Thorns by this author and thought it was really fun. I thought her writing style worked really well for me, so this is one that I think will also work really well for me. The next book that came out October 5th is PAYBACK'S a Witch by Lana Harper. So I think that this is kind of like adult rom-com, but fantasy, so maybe like paranormal romancy. So we have Emmy, who's a witch, but not a very powerful one, in part because she hasn't been home to the magical town of Thistlegrove in years. Her self-imposed exile has a lot to do with a complicated family history and a desire to forge her own way in the world, and only the very tiniest bit to do with Gareth, who's the heir to the most powerful magical family in town and casual breaker of hearts and destroyer of dreams. But when a spellcasting tournament, that her family serves as arbiters for approaches, it turns out the pull of tradition, or the truly impressive parental guilt trip that comes with it, is strong enough to bring Emmy back. She's determined to do her familial duty, spend some quality time with her best friend, and get back to her real life in Chicago. On her first night home, she runs into Talia, who's an all-around badass adept in the darker magical arts, who is fresh off a bad breakup with Gareth. So Talia had let herself be charmed, only discovered that he was also dating Lyndon, unbeknownst to either of them. And now she and Lyndon, who's Emmy's best friend, want revenge. Only one question stands: is Emmy in? But most concerning of all, why can't she stop thinking about the terrifyingly competent, devastatingly gorgeous, wickedly charming Talia? So this sounds super fun. I'm always up for like a good urban fantasy, paranormal romance, and this definitely seems like it's going to fit that. And it seems, spellcasting tournament is like a big draw for me. I do love a good competition. It's fun that we have like magical elements, but I feel like the promising romance here sounds really intriguing, and this just seems like such a fun time. And I think this is definitely one that I'll love. The next book that came out October 5th is A Spindle Splintered, there we go, by Alix E. Harrow. This is challenging to say, but I think I managed to do it. So this is an adult retelling of Sleeping Beauty. We have Zinnia's 21st birthday, which is extra special because it's the last birthday she'll ever have. When she was young, an industrial accident left her with a rare condition. Not much is known about her illness, just that no one has lived past 21. So her best friend Charm is intent on making her last birthday special with a full Sleeping Beauty experience, complete with tower and a spinning wheel. But when Zinnia pricks her finger, something strange and unexpected happens, and she finds herself falling through worlds with another Sleeping Beauty just as desperate to escape her fate. So that sounds just so delightful. Again, love a good retelling, especially fairy tale retellings. This sounds interesting. It does say it features some of the original illustrations for the Sleeping Beauty fractured and reimagined. So that sounds really cool and kind of like fun little immersion. I've read The 10,000 Drawers of January by this author, really enjoyed it. So I know that her writing style does in fact work for me. So I'm excited. This seems to be like the start of a new series. And again, just any sort of fairy tale retelling is a big yes for me. The next book that came out October 5th is The Lighthouse Witches by C.J. Cooke. So this seems to be, I guess, classified as an adult gothic thriller. So we have single mother Liv, who's commissioned to paint a mural in a 100-year-old lighthouse on a remote Scottish island. It's an opportunity to start over with her 3 daughters, but when 2 of her daughters go missing, she's frantic. She learns that the cave beneath the lighthouse was once a prison for women accused of witchcraft. The locals warn her about wildlings, supernatural beings who mimic human children created by witches for revenge. Liv is told that wildlings are dangerous and must be killed, but I guess 22 years later, Luna, one of the daughters, has been searching for her missing sisters and mother. When she receives a call about her youngest sister, Clover, she's initially ecstatic. Clover is the sister she remembers, except she's still 7 years old, which is the age that she was when she vanished. So Luna is a little bit worried that Clover is a wildling, and Luna has very few memories of her time on the island, but she'll have to return to figure out the truth of what happened to her family. But she doesn't realize just how much the truth will change her. So this sounds really intense. I like that we have a remote Scottish island. That seems like it'll be really atmospheric and certainly spooky elements. I like that we have this cave that's a prison for possible witches. That seems like it'll be really exciting as well. I like that we've got these wildlings. That seems intense and, you know, very ominous and dark. And I definitely want to know what happened to these sisters. Like, why is only one back? Where's the other one? Why is this one that came back only 7 years old? I don't know. So this seems like there's a lot of really fun mysteries to unpack. I think this will be perfect for the spooky season. The next book that came out October 5th is Luminous by Margaret Rutherford. So this is YA fantasy. And we have Leora, who has spent her life in hiding, knowing discovery could mean falling prey to the king's warlock, Darius, who uses mage's magic to grow his own power. But when her worst nightmare comes to pass, Darius doesn't take her. Instead, he demands that her younger sister return to the capital with him. To make matters worse, Evren, who is Leora's childhood friend and the only one who knows her secret, goes missing following this warlock's visit, leaving her without anyone to turn to. So, to find her friend and save her sister, she must embrace the powers she always feared. But the greatest danger she'll face is yet to come, for this warlock has plans in motion that will cause the world to fall into chaos, and Leora and Evren may be the only ones who can stop him. So that sounds super fun. I've read the Crown of Coral and Pearl duology and thought it was really fun, and I definitely, you know, like Margaret Rutherford's writing. It seems exciting that we have a witch who has to learn how to use her powers or risk losing her loved ones. I think having this warlock who uses other mage's powers to grow his own power seems really intense. Like, I don't know if he's stealing magic or what exactly, but certainly that is probably not great. So I think this sounds like it'll be a really fun adventure, and I am super curious to learn more about our characters. The next book that came out October 5th is Vial of Tears by Cristin Bishara. So this is another YA fantasy, and I think this is based on Phoenician mythology, apparently. So we have teenage sisters, Samira and Rima, who aren't exactly living the dream. Instead, they live with their very unreliable mother in a rundown trailer in Michigan. Their dad's dead, money's tight, and their mother disappears for days at a time. So when, I guess, Sam's grandfather wills her the family valuables, which is a cache of Lebanese antiquities, she's desperate enough to try pawning them before their mother can. But she shouldn't, because one is cursed, forbidden, the burial coin of her forgotten god. Disturbing it condemns her and her sister to the Phoenician underworld, a place of wicked cities, burning cedar forests, poison feasts of milk and linens, and an endless, windless ocean. Nothing is what it seems, no one is who they say, and down here the night never ends. To get home and keep her sister safe, Sam will have to outwit beautiful shapeshifters, pose as a royal bride, sail the darkest sea, and maybe kill the god of death himself. So does this not sound just so fabulous? I am super excited about it. Obviously, it does take place in, at least in part, in the real world, so I guess it's maybe like a portal fantasies sort of take on things, but I think it's really interesting that this builds off of the Phoenician underworld. I know nothing about that, but again, I'm really fascinated by, you know, mythologies from around the world, so I'm super excited to learn more about this, and it certainly seems like a dark underworld, but I think it's really exciting that our main character will maybe have to kill the god of death himself. Like, that seems fun. I'm definitely up for some, you know, it mentions gods, shapeshifters, ghouls, like, all of that is a big yes, so I am definitely excited to check this one out. The next book that came out October 5th is The Forest by Lisa Quigley. So this is adult horror. So everyone in Edgewood believes their annual tithes at the fall festival are what purchased Edgewood's safety, but as Faye and her husband prepare to take over as town stewards, a long tradition carried out by her family for generations, they learn the terrible truth. In order to guarantee the town's safety, the forest demands an unthinkable sacrifice. In the midst of everything, Faye is secretly battling debilitating postpartum anxiety that makes her all the more terrified to leave the safe cocoon of her enchanted town. When everyone turns against her, including her own husband, she's forced to flee with her infant son into the forest. She must face whatever lurks there, and perhaps most frighteningly of all, the dark torments of her own mind. So this sounds really interesting. It does mention that it's adult folk horror, so I think that sounds good, and like some of the comparisons I've seen, like I think I had seen something about, like, I mean, Bird Box is on there, but Twisted Ones by T. Kingfisher, and I really loved both of those books, so that kind of drew me in. But I actually heard Kasha from Kasha's Book Cemetery talk about this and was like, ooh, yeah, that sounds like something up my alley. I think it's really interesting, and I'm hoping that we'll have really good representation for postpartum anxiety. That's not something I tend to see all that often, and I feel like that's a really important topic to talk about. So I think all of this sounds really good. I feel like this is the type of horror that'll really appeal to me, and I definitely want to check it out. Okay, so we're finally done with the October 5th books, so we'll move to October 12th. And the first book I'll talk about here is Trailer Park Trickster by David R. Slayton. So this is the sequel to White Trash Warlock, which again, if you watch my most recent weekly update, you'll see that I did just review that and I really enjoyed it, gave it 4 stars. So if you want to learn more about my thoughts, I'll shuffle you over there. But this is adult urban fantasy. So Adam returns home to Oklahoma for a funeral, and once again finds himself in the path of deadly magic when a dark druid begins to prey on members of his family. It all seems linked to the death of a family member years ago, who may or may not still be alive. I'm trying to be vague to not spoil things, but so watched by the police, separated from the man who may be the love of his life, compelled to seek the truth about his connection to the druid, Adam learns more about his family and its troubled history than he ever bargained for, and finally comes face to face with the warlock he's vowed to stop. Meanwhile, beyond the veil of the mortal world, we have the Queen of Swords and the Reaper, who undertake a dangerous journey to a secret meeting to the Council of Races, where the Sea Elves are calling for the destruction of humanity. So that sounds super fun. Again, I really liked the first one, and I definitely want to continue that because I feel like there's a lot of plot threads being set up, and I just want to see kind of the aftermath of what happened there. And I'm really excited for Adam to keep growing and, learn more about, his family, certainly. This seems really fun. I'm very excited by the premise of, sea elves. Yes, I want that. But we also have a lot of fun supernatural beings in this world, and hopefully we get to learn more about them. It certainly seems like we do because we have this Council of Races. I'm very excited to see certain character names in the synopsis. I obviously kind of, retracted that, so I didn't spoil anything, but I'm very excited for those. I'm certainly curious to learn more about this warlock that Adam's facing, so I, again, liked the first one and just want to continue this. The next book that comes out October 12th is this Quicksilver Court by Melissa Caruso. So this is the second book in this Rooks and Ruin series, so this is the sequel to The Obsidian Tower, and this is a follow-up series to the Swords and Fire trilogy, which I absolutely loved. I basically loved everything that Melissa Caruso has been writing. She's an auto-buy author for me now. So this is adult fantasy. Basically, some bad things happened in the first book, and things have become unsealed, and some not-so-great creatures have been let loose upon the world. As tensions are growing between nations, all eyes and daggers are set on Morgraine, which has fallen under the Demon of Discord's control. When an artifact with the power to wipe out all life in a domain is stolen, Rix will do whatever it takes to save her home from destruction, but success may demand a larger sacrifice from her than she could have imagined. So, I know I'm going to get this book. Her writing is just so delightful. I've really loved all of these books. I think the character work is phenomenal. There's a lot of really exciting plot lines. It's an addictive writing style, I guess, and there's a lot of really great romances, great representation. So, what more do I need to say about this? I will definitely be getting this and cannot wait for it to come out. The next book that comes out October 12th is The Keeper of Night by Kylie Lee Baker. So this is YA. I would probably describe it as urban fantasy because it is set in 1890s Japan, so historical urban fantasy. So we have a half British Reaper, half Japanese Shinigami, Rin, who has been collecting souls in the London streets for centuries. Expected to obey the harsh hierarchy of the Reapers who despise her, she conceals her emotions and avoids her tormentors as best she can. When her failure to control her Shinigami abilities drives her out of London, she flees to Japan to seek the acceptance she's never gotten from her fellow Reapers. Accompanied by her younger brother, the only being on Earth to care for her, Rin enters the Japanese underworld to serve the goddess of death, only to learn that here too she must prove herself worthy. Determined to earn respect, she accepts an impossible task. Find and eliminate 3 dangerous yokai demons, and she'll learn how far she'll go to claim her place at death's side. So that sounds super fun. Again, do love a good dark urban fantasy, so that is something that's really exciting to me. But also I'm very curious about this whole Reaper Shinigami situation. I don't really know much about Shinigami, but I assume Reapers are the general Grim Reapers. But if I'm wrong, I am very excited to find out about that. But I think this explores the idea of being biracial and kind of not really being accepted by either side of your parentage. That's what I've kind of heard in some of the reviews that I've seen so far, but I'm really excited that we're entering the Japanese underworld again. That seems perfect for the spooky season. I love to learn more about other mythologies from around the world. I like that we have the goddess of death. I like that we're trying to kill some demons. That sounds exciting, but I think this sounds like a really fun YA fantasy, and I definitely want to check it out. Okay, so now we'll move to October 18th, and I think the only book I'll talk about here is The Skin by J.E. Hannaford. So I believe this is adult fantasy, and there's like some mythology elements to it. So basically, we have our main character who's a Selkie. So it's like, how far would you go to save your skin? I'm a Selkie trapped above the waves until I can recover my skin. Humans used to call us seal wives many years ago before they broke the planet. I thought that less humans after the warming would mean less danger. My kind believed our world was finally recovering. We were wrong. Up here, the magic is fading, and the old ones, like me, are being traded as trophies for rich and powerful humans to display in collections. Without the old ones, the magic fades, and without magic, the planet dies. Humankind has gone too far, and someone has to put a stop to it. I just wasn't expecting it to be me. So I guess part of the South, we have a lord who hunts for missing old ones with a grand plan to leave his own mark on the world. But we also have a couple of characters who are searching for them too, and this is a world where money talks louder than morals. So that sounds really interesting to me. Again, I love urban fantasy. This is an interesting one because I think this is almost like post-apocalyptic. Certainly it seems like we've had global warming. Basically what has happened is global warming has just kind of melted all the ice caps, and it's a very like seafaring world in general. There's probably not a lot of land left to live on, but I'm really intrigued by that premise, and certainly I'm very curious about all the different old ones around, because I feel like that could, you know, provide a lot of super fun supernatural creatures. It certainly seems like there's going to be some brutal moments to this, but I think this sounds like a really fun premise, and I'm certainly curious to check it out. Okay, so now we'll move to October 19th, and the first book I'll talk about here is Well Matched by Jen DeLuca. So this is the third book in this series, which is adult romance, and it's all set at Renaissance festivals, which is really fun. We have single mother April, who has lived in Willow Creek for 12 years with a wall around her heart. On the verge of being an empty nester, she's decided to move on from her quaint little town and asked her friend Mitch for his help with some home improvement projects to get her house ready to sell. Mitch is known for being the life of every party, but mostly for the attire he wears at the local Renaissance fair. A kilt and not much else that shows off his muscled form to perfection. When he agrees to help April, he needs a favor too. She'll pretend to be his girlfriend at an upcoming family dinner so that he can avoid the lectures about settling down and having a more serious career than a high school coach and gym teacher. So she reluctantly agrees, but when dinner turns into a weekend trip, it becomes hard to tell what's real and what's just been for show. But when the weekend ends, so must their fake relationship. So as summer begins, Fair returns to Willow Creek, and April volunteers for the first time. When Mitch's family shows up unexpectedly, she pretends to be his girlfriend again, and it doesn't feel so fake anymore. Despite their obvious connection, she insists they've just been putting on an act, but when there's a chance for something real, she has to decide whether to change her plans and open her heart for the kilt-wearing hunk who might just be the love of her life. So this is something that I know I'm going to get. You can maybe see Well Met over here. I have the second one, still haven't read it yet, but I'm planning on doing that really soon because we have actually made plans to go to the Renaissance Festival here at the end of the month, which I'm like, oh my god, I'm so excited for that. I love going to Renaissance festivals, and I just want to, like, I'm so excited to read the second book to, like, get me in the mood for that, and then I have this one to also look forward to, so it'll be just so delightful. But anyway, with Well Met, at least, it was really funny. I definitely believed in the romance, and it was, like, again, just sort of a really easy book to just fly through because it was just so much fun. So yeah, I mean, here we obviously have a fake dating type of trope, so that seems really entertaining as well, and I just can't wait for this. The next book that comes out October 19th is That Dark Infinity by Kate Pentecost. So this is YA fantasy, and so basically, I'll just read you like the very brief pitch, I guess, for it. So it's an immortal monster hunter and a royal handmaiden embark on an epic journey to change their fate in the soul-stirring young adult fantasy novel perfect for fans of The Witcher and The Last Unicorn. So there's some draws in there right now. But anyway, by night, the Anku is a legendary, permanently young mercenary, the most fearsome sword for hire in all the 5 lands, and its most abiding mystery. But when the sun rises, a dark magic leaves him no more than bones. Cursed with the cycle of death and resurrection, the Anku wants only to find the final rest that has been prophesied for him, no matter the cost. When the kingdom of Kylie is sacked, Flora, handmaiden to the royal family, is assaulted and left for dead. Wounded, heartbroken, and the sole survivor of this massacre, Flora wants desperately to be reunited with the princess she served and loved. She and the Anku make a deal. He will help her find her princess and train her in combat in exchange for her aid breaking his curse. But it isn't easy to kill an immortal, especially when their bond begins to deepen into something more. Together they will solve mysteries, battle monsters, and race against time in this fantasy novel about sacrifice, love, and healing. So I do have Elysium Girls by this author. I haven't read it yet, but I think that also had a really exciting premise that was like Dust Bowl craziness. So that's something I definitely want to read because it sounds awesome and I own it. So anyway, but I thought this sounded super fun as well. I do love The Witcher, so I'm like very intrigued by that, but it seems like a darker YA fantasy certainly. I like that we have an immortal monster hunter. You're like, yeah, what a curse that is, you know, changing into bones by day. So I'm hoping that we'll have some really interesting romance here as well, but I think that this sounds like such a fun time, and I definitely want to check it out. The next book that comes out October 19th is Little Thieves by Margaret Owen. So this is YA fantasy, and this is a retelling, I think, of The Goose Girl. So once upon a time, there was a horrible girl. Vanya knows that no gift is freely given, not even a mother's love, and she's on the hook for one hell of a debt. She's the adopted goddaughter of Death and Fortune and was Princess Giselle's dutiful servant up until a year ago. That was when her otherworldly mothers demanded a terrible price for their care, and Vanya decided to seal her future back by stealing Giselle's life for herself. The real Giselle is left a penniless nobody while Vanya uses an enchanted string of pearls to take her place. Now she leads a lonely but lucrative double life as princess and jewel thief, charming nobility when emptying their coffers to fund her great escape. Then, one heist away from freedom, Vanya crosses the wrong god and is cursed to an untimely end, turning into jewels stone by stone for her greed. So she has just 2 weeks to figure out how to break her curse and make her getaway. And with a feral guardian half-god, Giselle's sinister fiancé, and an overeager junior detective on her tail, she'll have to pull the biggest grift yet to save her own life. So, again, love a good retelling. I really like The Goose Girl, and I think that's a really interesting story to explore. It's not one that I see retold all that much. Like, I can certainly think of a few that I've really loved, but I definitely want to see this take on things. I like that we have death and fortune and, like, gods seeming to play a big role in things. Again, it kind of seems like a darker fantasy, perhaps. I like that Vanya is just straight up like a thief and gives no shits about things, it seems. But I also am very intrigued by this curse turning into jewels. Like, that seems not great. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these elements that I've mentioned really draw me into this, and I'm super curious to check this one out. The next book that comes out October 19th is Within These Wicked Walls by Lauren Blackwood. So this is kind of a retelling of Jane Eyre. I'm actually currently reading an arc of this, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I think I'm about 40% of the way in so far. This takes place in Ethiopia. So we have Andromeda, who is basically an exorcist who's hired to cleanse households of the evil eye. She would be hired, that is, if her mentor hadn't thrown her out before she could earn her license. Now, her only hope of steady work is to find a patron, a rich, well-connected individual who will vouch for her abilities. So when a handsome young heir named Magnus Rochester reaches out to hire her, she takes the job without question. Never mind that he's rude and demanding and eccentric, and that the contract comes with a number of outlandish rules, and that almost a dozen of these, exorcists had quit before her. If she wants to earn a living, she has no choice. But she realizes this is a job like no other, with horrifying manifestations at every turn, and that Magnus is hiding far more than she's been trained for. Death is the most likely outcome if she stays. The reason every Deptura before her quit, I don't know if I pronounced that right, hopefully I did, but leaving Magnus to live out his curse alone isn't an option because, heaven help her, she's fallen for him. This has been really exciting so far. Jane Eyre is actually one of the few classics that I really enjoy, and so it's kind of like, it seems like it's more of a loose retelling so far, but certainly there's some elements from that story, and that's been kind of fun to, like, pick up on. What I've enjoyed the most is, like, all these manifestations, and there's, like a room filling up with blood and things like that. So it's, like, really dark stuff at times and kind of spooky, and I feel like this is just perfect for this time of the year. I'll probably have this review up for my next weekly update, so you'll have that to look forward to. But now we'll move to October 22nd, and the only book I think I'll talk about here is Shadows and Vines by C.D. Britt. So this is, I would probably say, like, paranormal romance, urban fantasy kind of retelling. So it's like, everything you know about the gods of ancient Greece is a lie. Zeus, Hades, Poseidon, they don't exist as you've been told. For centuries, Persephone, the true ruler of the underworld, has watched humanity destroy themselves and the world around them. Known for centuries as her alter ego, Hades, she's guarded the souls under her care. Her only interaction outside her realm as CEO of the largest financial company in the world, Cerberus Financial. She's content with this, except a soul has called for her and her alone for thousands of years. One that she finds herself bound to in more ways than one. The Devon was murdered, his killer unknown, his past as a mercenary haunting him in the afterlife. He's sent to the underworld, but not as a soul meant to live out his eternity there. He's something far more powerful, and the more he learns about his new power, the more secrets are uncovered from his past. So this is apparently book one in the Reign of Goddesses series. I'm really intrigued by all of this. It seems like, it kind of mentions, like, all of these male gods are not actually real, and we have all these goddesses in these roles instead. It seems different than what I've seen before, and I think this could be a really fun, fresh take on certainly like the Persephone Hades mythology. And the last book I'll talk about today comes out October 26th, and that's Read On by Brandon Sanderson and Jancy Patterson. So this is the second in this like Skyward Flight novellas. I didn't realize the first one actually came out at the end of September, so I need to read that first. But basically, it seems like we'll have 3 Skyward novellas, each told from a different perspective of the member of the teams back on detritus. So this is kind of building up to the release of Cytonic in November, which I'm really excited about. So this is YA sci-fi. Like, don't trust their lies, don't trust their false peace. That's the warning that Alanic of the planet Redon gave the human pilot Spensa after Alanic's ship crash-landed on detritus. While accepting an invitation to meet with her people's enemy, the galactic superiority, Alanic heard Spence's cry for help across the vastness of space, and she used her cytonic powers to hyper-jump her ship to the source of that cry. What she found there was a shock. A whole planet of free humans fighting against the superiority. Were they the allies her people desperately needed? She's met some friendly humans, found that her warning to Spencer was unheeded by the government of detritus, and they're considering a peace overture from the superiority, and is basically dismayed to learn that her own people are falling into the same traps. Basically, there's some sort of like ancient technology that may have the power to save planets from disaster, and it's like, can they discover its secrets before it's too late? I really have enjoyed this series a lot so far. Brandon Sanderson's writing works extremely well for me. I think this is a super fun YA sci-fi series. I recently found out about these novellas. I think that this sounds super fun. I definitely want to check this out again before Cytonic releases. So those are all the books that I have to talk to you about today. Let me know in the comments if you think you're going to pick up any of these books. And for your question of the day, what is the October release that you're most excited about? So I do have a Discord channel, and if you want to join that, the link's in the description below. I hope you're all having an excellent day and are reading something awesome. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a big thumbs up, as that would certainly help me out. But with that, I think I'm going to wrap it up here and see you in the next one.